Okay, now we're going to have a shiur with first of all, I wanted to thank Adler come to give us shiur. It's a busy schedule. Usually, Adler is the More Hora by Rabbi and our community benefits him very much. Always my hard questions go to Rabbi Adler. We talk about the splendid different subjects. And Baruch Hashem, you have to understand that, Rabbi Adler, you have a few groups here. You should know that Baruch Hashem, I'm very happy and that the Sundays grew so much that you have people that they come to learn. I remember Sunday morning, his city was dead. They told me that, we have a minyan at 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning, and that's it. People come and daven and go, they have to go to park, to do this and that. Baruch Hashem, now we build up, we have Midrash, people come and learn. And this weekend also is the labor weekend, it's a little bit short, but usually more people come and learn. And Baruch Hashem, we have a good news for you that here the Persian community and this Kollel and here are growing. And Baruch Hashem, we see people come. And that's the greatest zechut on Yom Hadin, right before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And Baruch Hashem, we chose the Eruv Tavshilin because this year we have 3 Eruv Tavshilin. Now Rabbi would explain to us if you use one and keep it, could you use it for 3 of them or not? One target, one bullet for 3 of them. And just before Rabbi Adler should talk, just a machshava, because Rabbi Adler would speak more halacha. Just ashkafa in the Inyan of Elul. Everybody tries to find out a hint for Elul in this parasha. There are no open things. But I like something very much. Maybe to be chidush to everybody. As the apostle says, "Lo taskir eved el Adonai, asher tzelecha meim Adonai." For many years, I didn't understand what really apostle is talking about. Very be honest. What's apostle talking about? "Lo taskir eved el Adonai, asher tzelecha meim Adonai." Two pesukim, one parasha in Torah, one portion in Torah. They say, "Lo taskir eved." You should not give over the slave to his master, asher not sell elecha, that he looks refugee by you, elecha. Meim Adonai, from his master. Therefore, Rashi brings to Pshatim. First Pshatim Rashi says, Ketargomo. What does Targum says? Unbelievable Targum. Targum says, in other words, we are talking about a slave of Goyim. A Goy as a slave. And he runs away from his master. He comes elecha, he comes to you. What interests you that the master doesn't have? He's not running away from a hard work. He's not running away from a labor. He's running away from Avodah Zarah. He wants to join you, that you are Obed Hashem. He wants to come under shelter of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He wants to join you to become a Jew. Runs away from his master and comes to you. Torah says, asur, to give him over to the master. He should sit with you. Take care of him. Give him a good place. And don't take advantage of him. Interesting. Torah is telling us an Eved of a Goy, Oved Avodah Zarah, runs away to you. And it's also, of course, monetary things has to be handled. But the idea is that he comes to you, it's also to give him over. That's all. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said in his Torah, an Eved that has a lot of masters, and the master is pressing him to be Oved Avodah Zarah, to do things that the person should not do. And he runs away, and he comes to you. And you, it's also for you over to the hand of the master. The Shvarchu Paskins in his Torah, that David that runs away, don't give him over. That's Elul. That's Elul. We are living in a society that there are mastership. They are chaining us with Avodah Zarah, with Namishkai, with dirt, with a lot of tumah. the person runs away from them, and he comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he says, with saying selichot, with saying things, I want you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm coming to you. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, asking in his Torah, that you are not allowed to give over this Eved. Hashem does the same thing. When we run away from the Tumah, we run away from the mastership of the society that chains us in a lot of Tumah, a lot of things, and wants to get us. We run away and we come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem takes care of us. Hashem welcomes us, and Hashem doesn't give us over to the chain of the mastership. This Elul, this is Selichot. Like one for Sephardim, the Selichot says, Nipelana bi'ad Hashem ki rabim rachamav. Nipelana bi'ad Hashem ki rabim rachamav. We fall to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's from David HaMelech. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, David HaMelech, choose what you want. You want somebody to kill you, plague, or your hand? Nipelana bi'ad Hashem ki rabim rachamav. You are fall in the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, rabim rachamav. There are a lot of chains, lots of things that are stalking us. That's the let us to be able to Hashem properly. Once we leave the chain and go to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem would help us, and we would ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem to have a good year. To go further, we ask Adler, please come, and it's an honor and pleasure for us to have you here with us.
Thank you, Chaim. So this, we decided to discuss Eruv Tavshilin because again, as was mentioned, we're going to be having 3 times a 3-day Yom Tov, as we call it. So 3 times we're going to make an Eruv Tavshilin. What's the concept of the Eruv Tavshilin? So let's start very basic. When we have a Yom Tov, which is before Shabbos, either Yom Tov is on Friday and then comes Shabbos, or Yom Tov is on Thursday and Friday, then comes Shabbos. One really should not be able to cook on Thursday or on Friday for Shabbos. Why? So on Yom Tov, one is allowed to cook, one is allowed to prepare food. On Yom Tov, one is allowed to prepare food, allowed to do food necessities or certain other necessities for washing one's hands in warm water, different malacha for either food or maybe for hanoas haguf, for pleasure. However, let's say Yom Tov would be on a Tuesday. Can one cook for Wednesday or Thursday for Chol HaMoed? No. One can never do malacha on Yom Tov for a day which is not Yom Tov. So comes a year like this, where Rosh Hashanah is coming up, Habolenu L'Tova is Thursday and Friday. So can one cook on Thursday or Friday for Shabbos? The answer should be no. You can't prepare normally from one day for the next day. So what do we do? How do we prepare the food for Shabbos? So this is where the halacha of Eruv Tavshilin comes in. So there are really 2 Gemaras. I don't have the first Gemara on the source sheet, so I'll just say it. But let's look at the Shulchan Aruch. Let's begin with the Shulchan Aruch. If you can follow inside, great. If not, we'll explain it. So the Shulchan Aruch brings the halacha Yom Tov shechal להיות בערב Shabbos. Yom Tov, which is on a Friday. לא יבשל בתחלה לצורך Shabbos בקדירה בפני עצמה. You can't cook. We'll see this is not practical halacha, but It says you can't cook in your own pot, in a pot just for Shabbos. So before Eruv Tavshilin, if you want to do without an Eruv Tavshilin, you can just cook big pots, prepare a lot of food, and what's left over you can use for Shabbos. But you can't cook specifically for Shabbos on Yom Tov. But if you make an Eruv Tavshilin, which we'll see what that means, then one can cook normally on Friday for Shabbos. Pirush inin o Eruv. And what is an Eruv? Yebshel ויאפה מיום טוב לשבס. אם מה שבשל ואפה כבר מערב יום טוב לשם שבס. ונמצא שלא הסחה מלאכה ביום טוב, אלא גמר עושה. So, says the Shulchan Aryeh, that what is an Eruv all about? What is an Eruv Tavshilin all about? It means that you begin cooking the Shabbos food before Yom Tov. And therefore, when you continue cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos, it's just a continuation of what you began before Yom Tov. We don't look at you as beginning a new act of cooking for Shabbos, and therefore it's okay. So in other words, to sum up, the idea of Eruv Tavshilin, people think Eruv Tavshilin is a ceremony, right? You take a matzah and you take an egg and you say a bracha and you make a ceremony. Now, hocus pocus, now it's permissible to cook on Friday for Shabbos, right? That's not what it really is. What it really is you're beginning the Shabbos preparation before Yom Tov. When you cook the egg for Eruv Tavshilin, you're beginning to prepare for Shabbos. On Wednesday afternoon, before Yom Tov begins, you're beginning to prepare for Shabbos by cooking the egg, by maybe baking or at least preparing the matzah. And then, when you continue cooking on Friday for Shabbos, it's not that you began cooking the Shabbos food on Yom Tov, you began before Yom Tov and you're just continuing on Friday. And that's the idea behind Eruv Tavshilin. And the truth is, this is really, there are really two opinions in the Gemara in the Seches Beya, that Tesvav. This is really more of the second opinion of Rav Ashi. The Gemara says, what's the rationale of Eruv Tavshilin? The Gemara says two reasons. Rava says, Kedei sheyivra mana yafa l'Shabbos and mana yafa l'Yom Tov. Rava says that we want you to prepare a nice portion for Shabbos and a nice portion for Yom Tov, which is really a different idea. Which means that the idea of Eruv Tavshilin is because people will get so involved in Yom Tov, you might forget about Shabbos. In other words, you prepare all your best food for Yom Tov, and then Shabbos is going to come, and you'll wake up and say, oh wow, I didn't prepare the chamin for Shabbos, what do I do now? So we want to make sure everyone's cognizant, everyone's thinking about the preparation for Shabbos as well. So we say everyone should be borer maneh yafeh Yom Tov, borer maneh yafeh Shabbos. Pick out, prepare a nice portion for Yom Tov, a nice portion for Shabbos. That's how Rava explains Eruv Tavshilin. Rav Ashi says more what the Shulchan Aruch quotes, that Kedei sheyomru ein ofin miyom tov Shabbos kavachomim miyom tov l'chol. Rav Ashi says no. We want to emphasize to everyone: you can't cook on Yom Tov for another day. You cannot cook on a Yom Tov on Tuesday for Thursday. So we want to emphasize that. We want to say that if you didn't make an Eruv Tavshilin, you can't cook even on Yom Tov for Shabbos. All the more so you can't cook from Yom Tov for a weekday. So that's how Rav Ashi explains it. That's more how the Shulchan Aruch seems to quote it, that we want to emphasize to everyone, you can't cook on Yom Tov for a different day. There's an exception, cooking for Shabbos is an exception if you made the Eruv Tavshilin, which means you began the cooking process before Yom Tov, you can finish the cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos. So that's the idea of Eruv Tavshilin.
The whole idea of not preparing food from Yom Tov to Shabbos is doing melacha for another day.
Correct.
Just because I started it, what would the heter?
What was that to be? Very good. Okay, so now the question really is, okay, so we can't cook on Yom Tov for another day. So Chazal say, well, if you begin cooking before Yom Tov, then you can continue cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos. But how does that work, right? Another way to phrase the question, I'm going to phrase the question a little differently, which is the next Gemara, is I think we can understand on a d'Rabbanan level, right, that on a d'Rabbanan level, Chazal will allow us to do the Erev Tavshilin and thereby allow us to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos. But if we're discussing an Isser D'Oraisa, if we're discussing a Torah prohibition, if we'll say that the Torah prohibits cooking on Friday, Yom Tov, for Shabbos, right? Then in a Torah level, it's very difficult to understand that the fact that I began cooking before Yom Tov would allow one to continue cooking for Shabbos. And that's, I think, the basic question. And that's really the question of the Gemara in Pesachim, which I have on the sheet. So that's the Gemara in Pesachim, Daf Mem Vav Amud Beis. Let's take a look at the second source. It's Ha'ofe mi Yom Tov l'chol. One who bakes from Yom Tov for a weekday. Rav Chisda Omar Loke, Rabba Omar Eino Loke. Rav Chisda says if you cook on Yom Tov, which is on a Tuesday, for a Thursday, for a Wednesday, you get malchus, you get lashes. It's totally prohibited. Rabba Omar Eino Loke. Rabba says you don't get lashes, you haven't done a Torah prohibition. Rav Chisda Omar Loke, Lo Amrin Hoel the Umikla the Orchim Chazile. Rabba Omar Eino Loke, Amrin Hoel. So Rav Chisda says you get lashes, you transgress the Torah prohibition. Rabba says no. We say hoil. What does hoil mean? Hoil means since. Let's say you cook Tuesday afternoon, you cook for Wednesday. Well, yes, your intention is to cook for Wednesday, right? But in theory, let's say Thursday, 12 o'clock noon, you're cooking for Wednesday. But maybe guests will come, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you have a couple guests walk into your house, and suddenly this food will be fit for the guests, right? So the cooking is in theory edible today, right? Maybe another way to say it, and the Achronim discuss this idea, maybe the way to say it is, do we look at your kavanah? Do we look at your intent? Your intent is for tomorrow, right? Or do we say, no, the food intrinsically is fit for today. It can be eaten today. The Achronim discuss this concept. So, if guests would come now, it would be fit for consumption. So, even though your intention is to cook for Wednesday, but the food intrinsically is fit for today. It's fit for Yom Tov. So we can call this cooking for Ochel Nefesh for today. That's Rabba's opinion. Omar le Rabba le Rav Chisda. L'didach to Omar lo amin and hoa. Hech ofim Yom Tov l'Shabbos. So Rabba says to Rav Chisda, 1 second. According to you, this is really the question we ask. According to you, that you say if you cook from Tuesday to Wednesday, you get lashes. So how do you ever cook from Yom Tov on Friday for Shabbos? Really, this question. On a D'Oraisa level, how do you cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos? Omar le, you make Erev Tavshilin. Why? 1 second. We all know that Erev Tavshilin. You make an Erev Tavshilin. What says no? Umishim Erev Tavshilin sharin nisur D'Oraisa. So now this is the question we asked. Is an Erev Tavshilin enough to allow a Torah prohibition? In other words, if we say that it's prohibited in HaTorah to cook on Friday for Shabbos, how can Erev Tavshilin change things, right? Like we asked, how can the beginning of cooking before Yom Tov suddenly make a Torah prohibition permissible? Omar le, Rabba says no. Actually Rav Chisda says no. Mida oraisa tzorchei Shabbos nasin Yom Tov, Rabbanin de gazru bei gzeira shem yom ofim Yom Tov avlocha. V'kim dat tzirchur Rabban Eruv Tavshilin is leheker. Rav Chisda says no. On a D'Oraisa level, on a Torah level, you may cook from Yom Tov for Shabbos. Rashi explains because basically they're both kedusha achas. They're both kedusha. They're both days of kedusha. So when the Torah says achas she'yochel l'chol nefesh, the Torah says you can cook for food necessities for Yom Tov. Likewise, you can cook on Yom Tov for food necessities for Shabbos, because Shabbos is also kedusha. You can cook on Yom Tov for any day of kedusha. So on a Torah level, says Rav Chisda, you can cook from Yom Tov for Shabbos. It's only prohibited midrabban. It's only prohibited on a rabbinic level. And on a rabbinic level, that's where Erev Tavshilin comes in. In other words, on a Torah level, it's permitted anyway to cook for Shabbos. On a dirabbanan level, it's prohibited. Erev Tavshilin allows it on a dirabbanan level. So basically, again, according to Rav Chisda, we say really cooking from Yom Tov for a weekday is prohibited D'Oraisa. You get lashes, right? But cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbos is really okay on a Torah level. D'Rabbanan, they said don't, but when they said don't, they gave you a leniency that if you make an Erev Tavshilin, if you begin cooking before Yom Tov for Shabbos, and then just continuing on Friday for Shabbos, that's going to be permissible. That's Rav Chisda's approach. But if you think about it, according to Rabbah said whenever you cook on a Yom Tov for the next day, you don't get lashes.
I did my
Meaning,
early.
whenever you cook on Yom Tov for the next day, you don't get lashes, because we say the food intrinsically is fit for guests to eat. So, according to Rabbah, the reason why, it seems to the reason why it's okay to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos might be not because Tzorchei Shabbos Nasin Yom Tov, not because it's okay to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. That's not true. That's how the Rishonim assume. Rabbah argues with that. Rabbah says you can't cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. You know why D'Oraisa, if you cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos, it's not prohibited? It's because Choel Umikli Archim. It's because anyway, if you cook on Yom Tov for a different day, you have not transgressed a Torah prohibition, because it's fit for guests that may come. So in other words, bottom line, we have two opinions in the concept here. According to Rabbah, the reason why there's no Torah prohibition of cooking on Friday for Shabbos is because whenever you cook for the next day, it's not a Torah prohibition, because guests may come, they might eat the food, therefore it's intrinsically not called cooking for a different day, it's intrinsically fit for today. So he doesn't need to say that Tzorchei Shabbos Nasin Yom Tov. Rav Chisda says no, if you cook for the next day, it's a Torah prohibition. The only way you can cook on Friday for Shabbos is based on the concept that Shabbos is different. Tzorchei Shabbos Nasin Yom Tov. Those are the two opinions in the Gemara Pesach.
Is the problem hachana? Is that the main issue that we're dealing with? Or is it cook or like
it's the cooking, right? So really, good point. It's not. We're not right now. We're not focused on hachana. We'll get to hachana. Hachana means there's an issur to prepare from one day to another, even if it's not malach, right? Even if, let's say, you want to set the table on Yom Tov afternoon for the night, that might be asur. That is asur. Based on hachana, even preparation without doing melacha is prohibited. But we're not focused on that. We're focused on, because that would only be an issur d'Rabbanan. Preparation without melacha is only an issur d'Rabbanan. We're focused on the fact that you're cooking, you're doing a real Torah act of melacha. Doing that for the next day would be a Torah prohibition, if not for the two reasons that Rabbah and Rav Chisda respectively give. Okay, so these are the two opinions. Now, okay, very nice. So I just gave a Gemara shir, right? But it's supposed to be halacha shir. So where does the Gemara fit in to halacha l'maisa? So there's actually a very practical halacha based on this. So the Shulchan Aruch, we saw talked about the halacha of Erev Tavshilin, and I will get back in Mitzvah to just explain how Erev Tavshilin, how it's made, what you do practically, how you do it. But let's get there step by step. So says the Mishnah Brura, very interesting halacha. Based on what we learned, that if you want to cook now on Friday for Shabbos, right? So Friday you start cooking for Shabbos, then Friday afternoon, let's say Yom Tov, let's say Shabbos begins at 6 o'clock. So Yom Tov Friday afternoon at 5:30. You realize, I didn't make the cholent yet, right? I didn't make the chamin. So 5:30, I got to put up the cholents for Shabbos. So you take the raw meat, you put it in the pot, and you start making the cholent for Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Brura, one would not be allowed to do that according to the opinion of Rav Chisda. According to the opinion of Rabbah, According to the opinion of Rabbah. Why? Because if the whole reason, according to Rabbah, we allow you to cook on Friday for Shabbos based on Erev Tavshilin is hoel umikli le'archim, is because you could be able to serve this food to guests even on Yom Tov. Well, if you put up the chamin at 5:30 in the afternoon and Shabbos comes at 6, you're not going to be able to serve this to the guests. It won't even be It won't be edible by the time Shabbos begins. By the time Yom Tov is over, it won't even be edible. So you can't say that if guests would come, this food is fit for guests. It's not. It's not going to be fit for guests by the time Yom Tov is over. So according to Rabbah, you now have an Isur D'Oraisa, you now have a Torah prohibition of cooking, because you've cooked on Yom Tov for Shabbos in a way that the food's not going to be edible before Yom Tov is over. So this is a Torah prohibition. Torah prohibition, then the Erev Tavshilin doesn't help. So the Mishnah Berurah says, halacha l'maseh, that one should be careful to finish cooking for Shabbos early enough in the day that at least the food should be cooked, at least a third cooked, but the food should be pretty much ready and edible early enough that it could be eaten on Yom Tov if guests would come. That's to fulfill the opinion of Rabbah. Yeah.
Is there a possibility that Rabbah holds up both opinions?
Good question. I didn't go through the Rishonim again. There may be a possibility. Most Rishonim assume that Rabbah argues on Rav Chisda and Rav Chisda argues on Rabbah. I think that's your question. Could it be that Rabbah agrees with Rav Chisda? Most Rishonim don't say that. I'm trying to remember if some Rishonim do. I don't remember it. Good question. But in any case, the Mishnah Berurah says one should try their best to finish the cooking in a way that the food is edible before Shabbos. And he even says that there was a custom to make Shabbos early on a Shabbos like this, right? When Yom Tov is on, let's say, Friday Shabbos or Thursday Friday Shabbos, the custom is to make Shabbos early so that everyone would make sure to finish their cooking early enough that we would have the possibility that it could be eaten on Yom Tov. Now, what if someone didn't finish it? He didn't put up the cholent before. He realized half an hour before Shabbos, I didn't put up the cholent. So the Mishnah Berurah says that b'shas hadchak, one can be lenient on a Yom Tov Sheni. If it's a Thursday, Friday Yom Tov, one can be lenient if necessary to put up the cholent on Friday. Because in that case, it's a Thursday, Friday Yom Tov. Friday, if you recall, is only rabbinic, right? It's Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galuyot, right? That's a rabbinic halacha. So we can be a little more lenient. And he says, Ulai, even if it's a first day of Yom Tov, meaning let's say Yom Tov was Friday Shabbos, right? So let's say the first day of Yom Tov is on a Friday. If one is stuck, we can be lenient, mostly because we'll rely on the opinion of Rav Chisda that tzorchei Shabbos nasim b'Yom Tov. That the other reason that was given, that one can prepare on Yom Tov for Shabbos, since they're both days of Kedusha. So b'shas hadchak, one can rely on that opinion. And in Yakut Yosef, basically says the same thing that's here. Avi sheichin Eruv Tavshilin kados, yishtadel la'akdim l'lashav Yom Tov es tzorchei HaShabbos b'sh'os ha'mukdamos shel hayom, de'shesayem ha'afir v'abishal odem gadol. It says the same thing. Lechatchila, one should try to do the cooking early enough in the day on Friday. So that if you had guests, you could serve the guests. But he says, if you're stuck, then you can rely on the opinion that tzorchei Shabbos nasim Yom Tov, and one can, if necessary, cook even late in the afternoon up till Shabbos begins. Okay, I will mention one thing interesting, just a little bit off the topic, but I want to mention before I forget. Remember that the halachas of the regular halachas of Shabbos apply on Shabbos. What I mean is, I remember situations where people they put up the cholent on Yom Tov Friday, beautiful. They put up the cholent early on Friday before Shabbos, but they forget to make a blech. Or they don't, you have to keep all the halachas of shehiyah and chazara, all the regular halachas, not on Yom Tov. On Yom Tov you can cook normally, at least within the halachas of Yom Tov, but basically normally. But if you normally, again, maybe the Sfardim, I don't know, they follow the mechaber, maybe a little more machmir about a blech, right? More machmir. But in any case,
no, minhag is like
minhag is like Ramah? Okay. But in any case, if one normally would put a blech, would normally put a gerufa uktuma and put a covering on the fire between the cholent and the fire, the soup and the fire, don't forget to do that when Shabbos is after Yom Tov. I remember people forgot you're so used to cooking on Yom Tov, you don't cook on Yom Tov, but you forget to put the blech. So you have to remember to keep all the halachas of Shabbos. So again, one should try to finish the cooking early in the day, so you have oil. And of course, one should keep all the halachas that apply on Shabbos, so that there's a blech. And then when Shabbos comes, obviously you can't raise or lower the flame. You can't do chazara without the halachas of chazara. One should keep all those halachas of okay. Let's go through now just a couple. Let's go through the practical halachas of making erev tavshilin. So, what do you use for an erev tavshilin? Basically, the halacha is lechatchila. One uses a davar afui and a davar mevushal. You need one cooked food and one baked food. That's the lechatchila. And the custom normally is to have maybe take either a roll, a challah roll, or a matzah as a davar afui, and as the davar mevushal, one should take anything cooked. Why was it, at least for the Ashkenazim, the custom has always been to use a hard-boiled egg? Why that? Because before refrigeration, that was the food that would stay the best, that would stay the freshest. So nowadays, again, the halacha, anytime, you could take any davar mevushal. You could take a piece of fish, a piece of meat. Nowadays, you have refrigeration, there's nothing wrong with using that. It still seems to be the custom is hard-boiled egg, but it doesn't have to be that. It should be it should be lechatchila a kibetza, the size of an egg of the bread item, and a kazayis of at least a kazayis of the cooked item. And it should be a nice piece. Yeah.
Regarding the bread, if you buy the bread, why could you use this as the tavshilin? You should bake the bread, and you should cook something. But everybody buys the bread.
It's a good question. Because we'll say now that lechatchila, one is supposed to bake or cook the item l'shem Eruv, or at least l'shem Shabbos. At least lechatchila. So number one is that me'ikar hadin. Me'ikar hadin, it's kosher even if you didn't. Halacha is even if you didn't bake it for Shabbos, it's still kosher. Why? I'm just gonna guess. I'm gonna guess. The truth is the halacha is me'ikar hadin. If you have the cooked item, that's enough. The baked item is only lechatchila. So maybe we're a little more lenient on the baked item. It's only lechatchila, and even if you don't prepare it l'shem Shabbos, it's still kosher me'ikar hadin. Maybe we rely on these two things, and therefore we're not makpid. I don't know if there's another reason familiar with.
So what if you also buy the food?
Right, the food one should really be particular, at least about the food. One should be particular to cook that food l'shem Eruv, or at least l'shem Shabbos. One at least the egg. That much, at least the egg. Don't go to the store, buy a jar of gefilte fish and say this is my erev tavshilin. That's probably the one should not do. At least the food lechatchila. If you did it, it's still kosher. But lechatchila, one should cook the food at least l'shem Shabbos or l'shem Eruv. Lechatchila l'shem Eruv. I was wondering, I actually, the question that Chaim asked before at the beginning of this year, I didn't know the answer. Can you use the same thing for, three Yom Tovs? Again, it says one should cook it l'shem Shabbos. I think it means for that Shabbos, but I don't know. I don't know if, do you have any insight into that? What?
Yes, I throw the question.
Good, very good question. I would think, good question to throw out.
But you have to prepare, is there anything that you have to prepare on Erev?
Yes. So one should.
Halacha would interfere.
Sorry?
If you have to prepare Erev, then would.
Right. I think lechatchila one has to prepare on Erev Yom Tov, and lechatchila should be cooked for Shabbos. I think for both those reasons, you probably have to prepare a new one for every. You definitely would have to re-say the bracha, make the Hadei Eruv again every single Yom Tov, right? And again, if you're going to cook the food, which one should do, one should cook it specifically for that Shabbos. I believe one should do it every single Yom Tov, make a new one, make a new bracha.
If someone forgot to make your tavshilin.
Okay, good. Let's get back to that. I want to get back to it a little bit later. Okay. So again, how do you make a tavshilin? You take davar afui, you take a roll or a matzah, you take a hard-boiled egg or anything cooked, you cook it preferably l'shem Shabbos. And then you pick it up in your hand. You make the bracha, and you say, you look at the siddur, it says, with this Eruv we're allowing, we become permitted to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos. And that should be done on Erev Yom Tov. On Erev Yom Tov, one's supposed to do that. Now, very important halacha, people make a mistake. Are you allowed, if you make the Erev Tavshilin on Wednesday, before a Thursday, Friday Yom Tov, are you allowed to cook on Thursday for Shabbos? The answer is no. Not everyone realizes this. Erev Tavshilin does not allow you to cook on Thursday, which is Yom Tov Rishon, for Shabbos, which is 2 days later. You can only cook on Friday for Shabbos, not on Thursday for Shabbos. That's a halacha on the Shulchan. Okay.
Says Kedusha Achatzi. What's the problem?
Dirabanan, I guess the Erev Tavshilin they only allowed it the day before. Okay. Now the truth is, in terms of eating the Erev Tavshilin, it's always interesting to me. The halacha doesn't say you have to eat it on Shabbos. It has to be set aside for Shabbos. The halacha does not say you have to eat it on Shabbos. So really, one can eat the Erev Tavshilin food on Friday afternoon, and once you finish cooking for Shabbos. If you go to the fridge Friday morning and you realize that your 6-year-old son ate the egg, you're in trouble, right? If before you cooked for Shabbos, this is an interesting halacha. If before you cooked for Shabbos, the Erev Tavshilin is gone, you have to ask a shayla. That's a real problem. But once you finish cooking for Shabbos, you can really go ahead and eat the Erev Tavshilin. Lechatchila, it should be left for Shabbos. It's really meant as Shabbos food. One should eat it for Shabbos. Lechatchila, one should eat it. Some even say to use the lechem as lechem mishnah for the night meal, the day meal, and then eat it by the shalosh shuddis meal, by the sudash lishitz. That's
what we know.
That is Amin. Okay, the Mishnah Berurah brings it as well. So that's Minig Asfarim as well. Good. Okay, so that's basically the halacha. What if one forgets to make an Erev Tavshilin? So hopefully the Rav of the city normally makes an Erev Tavshilin for the entire community, or the Rav of the community makes an Erev Tavshilin for the community. So hopefully one would be able to rely on the Rav, although the Gemara says you can only do it once. Right? One time, you have a one-time dispensation. If you forget, you can rely on the Rav. If you do it the second time, right? You can't. It's a question. What does it mean a second time? What if it's 2 years later? So that's a question. But basically, what if you really didn't make an Erev Tavshilin and it's your third time and you really didn't do it right? You have to ask a Rav what you're allowed to do. There are complicated halachas of exactly to let someone else bake for you. It's very complicated what exactly you're allowed to do. Then you have to ask a shayla how to do it. But again, no one should forget Erev Tavshilin. If you forget once, so then you can rely on the Rav who made an Erev Tavshilin for the community. Another question I want to discuss. I want to basically discuss, getting a little bit late. I want to discuss two more interesting questions about Erev Tavshilin. So, question number one is Maser Shahaya. I had this. I live in this area. My in-laws live in the other side of town. So I wanted to walk from this area to the other side of town on the second day of Yom Tov. It was, in other words, a case where I guess it was a Thursday, Friday Yom Tov, and we wanted to walk there Friday afternoon to be there for Shabbos. So we normally don't use the Eruv. Is there any issue, but of course you can carry on Yom Tov, is there any issue with pushing a stroller and bringing all your Shabbos clothes, carrying it on Friday for Friday night for Shabbos? I want to bring all my pajamas and my Shabbos clothes for the next day, push it in a stroller, take it on Friday for Shabbos. So I didn't think it was any issue. And then I learned a little more and I realized that that's not so simple. Because the Siman Tavkuf, which is the next, this very small Siman in Shulchan Aruch, right after halachas Erev Tavshilin, there's an interesting halacha. The halacha is you cannot make an Erev Chatzeros or an Erev Techumin on Yom Tov. You can't, if let's say there's an apartment building and you need to make an Erev Chatzeros, you need to join them in order to be able to carry the apartment building, or an Erev Techumin, you want to walk out of the Techum, you can't make these Eruvin on Yom Tov. What about 1 second. Okay, basically you can't make it on Yom Tov. What if we want to make them on Yom Tov for Shabbos? In other words, it seems like you could make it on Yom Tov for that day. I think you can make it. I think you can make an Erev Techumin. You can't make an Erev Techumin for the next day on Yom Tov. Let's put it that way. Can you make an Erev Techumin on Friday for Shabbos? Right? So one would say, well, what's the problem making Erev Techumin for the next day? It's preparation, it's melacha, it's nira kemisakin, whatever the issues are. But if I can do melacha on Friday for Shabbos if I made an Erev Tavshilin, so I should be able to make an Erev Techumin on Friday if I made an Erev Tavshilin. The halacha in Shulchan says you can't. Even if you made an Erev Tavshilin, it's Tav Kuf Chav Ches Sif base. Even if you made an Erev Tavshilin, you cannot make an Erev Techumin on Friday Yom Tov for the Shabbos. Why not? Why not? If you could do melacha, if you can cook on Friday for Shabbos, why can't you make an Erev Techumin or Erev Chatzos? So this is from the Ran. It's brought in the Mishnah Berurah and Tav Kuf Chav Ches, and it says because Eruv. This is on the source sheet if you want to take a look. Eruv Tavshilin eino matir el l'saken tzorchei seuda lezorech machar. Because Eruv Tavshilin only allows tzorchei seuda. It only allows food necessities. It doesn't allow any malacha. Only food necessities for the next day. So Erev Techumin is not a food necessity. You can't do Erev Techumin for the next day. So the poskim say, based on this, that according to this round, one would not be allowed to carry, in a place where there's no Eruv, if you don't follow the Eruv, you cannot carry on Yom Tov for Shabbos, even with an Erev Tavshilin, if it's not tzorchei seuda. If it's not food, you can carry the food for Shabbos, but you can't carry the clothing for Shabbos because it's not tzorchei seuda.
What does it make a difference if you're somewhere on the Eruv or not?
Well, if you rely on the Eruv, then there's really no malacha at all.
No, but it's Yom Tov.
So you're saying, so what's the issue? It will be hachana. Good. Okay. So good. Why? What about hachana? So that. But let's just go get back to that question in a second. But again, just to explain, you cannot do malacha on Yom Tov for Shabbos, even with an Erev Tavshilin, if it's not tzorchei seuda. There's a question on this, and that's why I want to address your question in a second. There's a question, because the Mishnah Berurah in סימן Shin Beis Sifkat and Yudzayin in Hilchos Shabbos talks about folding a talis, right? So normally in halachas you don't fold your talis on Shabbos. For the next day, for sure not. Even for that day, there's a lot of conditions. But there are certain conditions if it's a new talis. Certain ways you could fold it if it's for that day itself. But if it's for the next day, you can't, because that's hachana, that's preparation. Says the Mishnah Berurah, but if you made an Erev Tavshilin, you can fold your talis on Friday for Shabbos. If it's a kind of talis which is permissible to fold anyway, won't get into that now. So says Rabbi Akiva Eger, says the Mishnah Berurah, B'Shem Rabbi Akiva Eger, you can fold your talis on Friday for Shabbos if it's the kind of talis that the only issue is preparation, it's hachana, you can do it. So the question is, it seems from here, this is not tzorchei seuda, this is not food preparation. So why is it permissible to do this on Friday for Shabbos? Says the Maharsha Midas Torah, we must say that there's a difference between melacha and hachana. That even though the Ran says you can't do melacha on Friday for Shabbos, if it's not tzorchei seuda, but if it's not melacha, but just an act of preparation, then it's going to be permissible. So that's why I say, so if you use the Eruv, then there's no melacha involved. Then the only issue is hachana, preparation. So that the poskim seem to accept. You can prepare anything from Friday to Shabbos if you made an Erev Tavshilin. So you can set the table, you can wash the dishes, you can carry if there's an Eruv. Those things you can do. You can maybe roll the Sefer Torah Friday for Shabbos. Those things the poskim accept that you can do. But if it's melacha, if you're actually carrying out of the Eruv, or things which are more melacha oriented and they're not directly tzorchei seuda, normally one should be machmir and follow this Ran. Again, there are different shitas about it, so one should ask a Rav what the halacha l'maaseh is. Yeah.
Lighting candles.
lighting candles. I think of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach writes that's called tzorech suda. Even though candles are not they're not edible, but there's so much of a hanas hakuf that we consider them tzorech suda. So that all the poskim assume is fine. Yeah.
But carrying, and Yom Tov is not melacha. I mean, even if you don't hold up the Eruv, but then Yom Tov, the melacha of carrying is not a melacha. It's just preparation.
The pashtus is, some hold like that. The pashtus is that hatzah is asur on Yom Tov if it's not ltzorech. In other words, if you would carry on Yom Tov, if you carry a rock on Yom Tov, out of the Eruv, the Shabbos Aryeh writes, I believe that you get malchus. Pick up a rock, in Rishus HaRab, we carried Arba Amos, I think the Shabbos Aryeh says you get malchus. Not a tzorech. I believe he says that. So there are questions about it.
So carrying clothes for Shabbos,
right.
It's a melacha or it's a chana?
So if you don't go with the Eruv, if there's no Eruv, I think it's melacha.
So therefore?
So it would be, so the psak should be, again, practical halacha, Eruv is going to have to wait. Well, there is an Eruv in Los Angeles, if you're machmer not to use it, but for this is only, there are many reasons to be mitzaref, to be made. If someone asked me the shayla, I would have to think about, there are reasons, you do have an Eruv in Los Angeles, there are those who argue with the shita of the Ran, there are different reasons why maybe one could be lenient, but as a question, at least it's a good question whether you can carry, if you don't use the Eruv, whether you can carry.
Let's say you live in different cities, there's no Eruv.
No Eruv at all. So normally the psak should be that one should not carry clothing on Friday for Shabbos. That would normally be the psak.
And also tzitzit for Shabbat.
You have talents, let's say, right? You're right. So again, halacha l'maaseh, you have to ask Rabbi Chaim. But yeah.
Is it very obvious to use it on Friday?
I'm sorry?
When you take it.
Maybe you could use it on Friday, right? Maybe if you bring a Shabbos suit and put it on Friday afternoon, an hour before Shabbos, that might be a solution, right? Yeah.
How you do? For mincha you do.
For mincha, not Ashkenazim. It's started to put on talents. Oh, are you saying you take a suit?
Suit, yeah.
If you change your suit before, that might be a good solution, right?
Yeah. You have the same issue. The second day of Yom Tov Sheni, or the first days.
Right.
Right. If you have your extra gandula, you want to take it home for the next day, which is Chol HaMoed.
That's for sure a question. That's for sure a question. Yeah, correct. So again,
So if there's no Eruv, it's much better to just leave it in
There's no Eruv, there's much more reason to leave it in shul. If there is an Eruv, then we're only dealing with hachana, it becomes a little more, becomes easier. But these are all good questions.
Yeah,
let me just discuss one more, I know I'm going a little over time, let's discuss one more question, then we'll end. Someone asked about lighting candles. So what lighting candles, Shlomo Zalman says, that's called a tzorech haguf. That's considered like a tzorech suda. So normally to light candles on Friday for Shabbos would be fine. Interestingly, Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva. He asks a different question. He says, that was Bisman HaGemara. I understand how you can light candles, because that I can get benefit from. So Bisman HaZeh, we have electric lights. So when we're lighting candles, we're really, really not getting any benefit from it when we light the candles, right? So what's the heter to light candles, to light Shabbos candles on Friday, right? Really, he says, number one, you're not really benefiting of the electric lights are on. Number two, there's really no hoel. There are two problems. He asks it one way, other asks another way. There's no hoel. Meaning, what's hoel? Guests might come. So he says, interestingly, a number of things. Number one, well, these candles are being specifically lit for covered Shabbos. So we're dedicating it for Shabbos. How can you say, well, guests might come, I enjoy it. I'm doing it for Shabbos, not for now. Number two, others ask, it's still light. When you light the candles, it's still light outside, right? So forget about the electric lights. It's still light outside, right? So you can't benefit until it gets dark. Once it's dark, it's already not Yom Tov anymore. So the whole is a difficult thing to apply. There are a number of questions about how we light candles on Friday for Shabbos. So Rav Moshe Feinstein writes, interestingly, he says, either you have to say we pass like Rav Chisda, that tzorech Shabbos nasim b'yontiv, that this is called a tzorech of Shabbos, even though maybe the lights are on, but it's still a covered Shabbos, an honor of Shabbos is included in tzorech Shabbos nasim b'yontiv. He says, or if you go according to the opinion of Rabbah, that is based on Hoel, he says a big chiddush. He says, you gotta say that there's no isur to light fire on Yom Tov, even not ltzorech Yom Tov. Which is the shita, maybe the shita is a Rambam. The Rambam might say that Havara and Hotzah are permissible on Yom Tov in any way. That's what Moshe writes, very interesting chiddush. Rabbi Yoshev is quoted as saying a little different. Rabbi Yoshev says, even though you're lighting the light now in the room where the lights are on, but he says, look, you could pick up the light and you could bring it to a dark room. Maybe if there's a blackout in theory, you'll have the light. Maybe if you want to light your stove fire, you have a light to light from. So the Yoshev says there are different ways where we could call this a tzorech Yom Tov. But in any case, I'll mention the chumrah. I'm not telling you to keep this chumrah, but there's a chumrah some want to say based on this, to set your timer so that the electric lights go out. They're out when you light your Shabbos candles, and then they go on afterwards. I'm not telling people to do this, but just interesting to know that this is a question that's discussed. I think based on Moshe and Rabbi Yoshev, one would be allowed to light Shabbos candles normally for Shabbos. Yashakayach, and everyone should have a ksiv v'chasima tova.